In Colossians 3:12 through 14, so as those who have been chosen of God, holy and beloved, put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, patience, bearing with one another and forgiving each other. Beyond all these things, put on love, which is the perfect bond of unity. You get dressed each morning. You choose what clothes. You also choose it's a time to choose your attitude of what's your day going to be like. You're going to wake up with aches and pains and sneezes and coughs and whatever. But you kind of need to choose how you're going to then deal with the rest of your day. And I hear a lot of people say, it's another day that the Lord gave me. And those little kids get taught for the Lord to be with them through the night. And in the morning, something to the effects of, thank you, Lord, for being with me through the night. To appreciate what they've got is the sentiment. And some days are harder than others. And it doesn't matter if you're in school, you're at work, you're not in work, regardless of what your work is, some days are just harder. This one's one of them. Nobody was expecting this, what some would say, skiff of snow. Some would call it snow. It's all about how you look at it. And we could have had more, we could have had less. But for some people, that's a challenge. I know I went to pick up Jackson this morning and the roads were icy. Fortunately, they were a little bit better when it got to be time to come to services. So, workplace injustices. We all have those. Coworker takes credit for your idea. The flesh wants retaliation. That's what we're taught. That's what society teaches us. But the Christ-like attitude would be gracious and truth-telling and leaves vindication with God. If there's if there's a wrong to be righted, leave it with God. It's not your battle. And as far as that goes, at least my attitude in the workplace, let them have credit. It'll come out in the end. If they're doing that all the time, it'll be discovered in time. So you don't have to be the one to set things right. Congregational territories. Now I'm going to say, we've been here about 15 years. I cannot say I have seen that here. When someone sits in my pew and suggests I change, I have seen that. And you just know that we don't, I'm going to pick on Andy and Kathy because they're right here. We just know that you don't sit there. See, Kathy's pillow's right there. I may move that pillow next. Andy will come in first, though, and Andy will say, that's not the third row, that's the second row. Why is that pillow going up there? And then Kathy will follow Andy. But seriously, that's been a joke in church as long as I ever remember. Because there are people that are that territorial about their seat. But you got to train your attitude. Is it really that big a deal that you're not going to sit in your seat for 1 week? And I know Kathy's not the only one that's got a pillow or a footstool or something else scattered around this building. But I've never seen anyone do a double take or a scornful look when someone's sitting in their seat. And by the way, you're to be applauded for that. So, remember, this was last week. So, in the first part of this, God calls us to align our hearts to be aligned with Jesus. So, this week, we're going to talk about attitudes that help us walk through the dark valleys. So, see, we were really close last week. I just didn't want to push the envelope, so to speak. But, bottom line is, each morning, set your attitude. And the wintertime's a good time to bring that up because it's cold, it's blustery, it's snowy. Well, this past week it was warm, and now it's cold. You got an opportunity to set your attitude, if nothing else, regarding the weather every morning for right now. All right. Today, trials in the valleys and the attitude that endures. Choosing joy and perseverance in our trials. You know, we've heard a lot of different men come up here and speak about Psalms, I want to say 23. I'm thinking 24. Which one is it? 3? Thank you. Psalms 23. About, yea, though I walk through the valley. We walk through valleys every day. We just don't think about it that way. We have those in here who have, or on our prayer list even, that a lot of our laundry list of those with cancer is grown tremendously in the last few years. They walk through a valley every single day. We've had different illnesses happen in here, different surgeries that have had to happen, those healings, those are valleys. Those are things we have to deal with every day. And in James 1, 2 through 4, the word consider. Consider it all joy, my brothers and sisters, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete and lacking in nothing. There is a song, and it just occurred to me, something to the words of, if it doesn't kill me, it makes me stronger. It was popular a few years ago. There's a lot of truth in that. We just kind of jokingly think about it, but when you think about that, consider it joy when you have various trials. That's how we mature. That's how we learn. We learn from the things that don't go right. That don't go right. That could be co-workers. That could be family. That can be spouses. You don't always see eye to eye. You don't always hear ear to ear, so to speak. Things don't always make sense. Or, what did you mean by that? Those are different trials, but we learn from all of those things, and they help us to become better. Whether we're in school, we're working, we're at home, we're raising kids, we're just dealing with each other. And then there's, congregationally speaking, there's dealing with each other. That's another relationship. And we have to learn. But consider is an attitude word. The trials are God's tools. But what consider says, on Sunday evening, just a few weeks ago, I did one about 5 things that Jesus does not do for you. Jesus does not set your attitude. You do. And that's what the significance of the word consider is all about. You have to consider it. You have to think about what's your attitude. It's not an accident. It's a choice. In Romans 5, 3 through 5, not only this, but we also celebrate in our tribulations, knowing that tribulation brings about perseverance, and perseverance, proven character, and proven character, hope, and hope does not disappoint. I know it's kind of a hard concept to say celebrate in your tribulations. Celebrate in the things that aren't going right is what that means. But those are the things that help us deal with the next things that come. And God uses those trials to help us to grow. Once we overcome that hard thing, the bad thing is, once you overcome that hard thing, the next thing's harder. And the next thing's harder. But that's life. The problems we face are not the problems that the school-age kids that we have here in our room. It's not the problems they face. And they don't face our problems, hopefully. But they're all things we have to face in order to grow. They produce endurance, character, and hope. Believers must choose to celebrate the trials instead of resenting them. It's an attitude. It's a choice. It's how we deal with life. So the shepherd's presence in the valley. In Psalms 23, 1 through 4, the Lord is my shepherd. I will not be in need. He lets me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. The valleys we walk through are the trials, the tribulations, the problems, the challenges that we face. Those are our valleys. And no one ever explains that about Psalms 23. I know growing up, the valleys were a valley. Major things. But the little things to us are our valleys. And all the... And I'm going to say this, and I can almost pinpoint who's going to make comments, and that's okay. The hollows that feed into the valleys are what the tribulations are. Those hollows are feeding to the valleys, and those hollows are the small tribulations, the small trials, the small problems, the small things. The valleys are the big things. And for each and every person in here, those have different meanings. What's in your small hollow problem might be somebody else's valley, because you're a little better equipped because you've been through things, but they've not been through something like that. Loss of a parent. Let's just go there. The first time you lose a parent, world comes to an end, so to speak. When you lose the second parent, you've been through it a little bit. It's not that it's easier, but you've been through it and you know a little bit more about how to handle it. And I'm not minimizing any of that. But I'm just saying that once you've been through an experience, the next experience is just a little bit easier because you know what the next steps are. You know what's expected. You know, doesn't mean the grieving's different. It just means you know the process a little bit versus somebody who's never been through it. Maybe not the best example, but hopefully you get my point. I will not be in need, and I fear no evil, and confess trust. David chooses to rest with the shepherd in the valley. Shepherd's always there. The Lord's always there. He's always there for us to talk to pray to. We talk a lot about how the footsteps in the sand. And sometimes there's one set of footsteps, and it's His not carrying us. It's not us. The world would say, oh, that's us. He left us. No, that's His. Carrying us, helping us. In Hebrews 2, 14 and 15, that through death He might render powerless him who had the power of death, that is, the devil, and free those who through fear of death were subject to slavery all their lives. freed from slavery to fear. We don't necessarily give a lot of credence that fear drives a lot of things. Mark's been going through the history of the church. And today, well, not just today, but today specifically, he was talking about how religion controlled the people in what we refer to as the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages. But a lot of that was through fear. A lot of that was through control. They didn't have Bibles. They didn't have electronic devices. Right now in Iran, if you're aware, but the people are uprising against the government. The Ayatollah Khomeini may be on his way out the door, along with that structure. And which, from the uprisings of what information is coming out, they actually may be turning towards Christianity more than Islam, which is kind of an interesting change. But how are they controlling the people? They're shutting off electronics. They're shutting off the internet. They're shutting off communication. They're shutting off everything. Well, that's no different than what Mark's been talking to us about in the Middle and the Dark Ages, about how they controlled the information to control the people. And that slavery to fear is sometimes what these verses are really talking about. You're afraid of something, so therefore, as someone made the comment this morning, it doesn't mean that other people didn't have the thoughts that what was going on wasn't wrong, but there was fear to speak up, because am I alone? And that's always a thing with regards to religion. Am I alone? Am I the only one that will speak up? So if I step forward and speak my piece, is nobody else going to step forward with me? Am I alone? Christ's victory removes death's hold. We only simply have to read what Paul has to say. He knew that the Lord was with him. He wasn't afraid. And each disciple must decide to live as free or bound by fear. So we have to kind of decide how we want to live our lives. With the being free, knowing Christ is right there with us, and it doesn't really matter. Now, granted, that's kind of a hard thing, because you're talking about physical and spiritual. Or are we going to be guided by the fear of? So God will not choose your attitude for you. In Deuteronomy 30 and 19 and 20, I call heaven and earth to witness against you today that I have placed before you life and death, the blessing and the curse. So choose life, in order that you may live, you and your descendants, by loving the Lord your God, by obeying his voice, and by holding close to him. This free choice goes clear back into Deuteronomy. It's back further earlier, but I didn't use those verses. But what it really says is that mankind's always had that ability to choose. I was reading something about Cain and Abel, and never thought about this way. But if you go back and read that, read it from the standpoint of after Cain killed Abel, that God still gave Cain opportunity to confess what he did. And what did he say? Am I my brother's keeper? Why are you asking me? I don't know anything about it. That was God's way of saying, you want to speak up and confess? And what Cain choose to do? I'm not my brother's keeper. I have no idea where he's at. So we get opportunities to do things, and we can choose how we treat and how we are responsible with our lives. God places options before his people. We all have options. He does not make the choice for them. In Joshua 24:15, choose for yourselves today whom you will serve, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. A very common phrase that's quoted. It's a choice. It really says the same thing we're talking about. You have a choice of what attitude you're going to put forth. Is your attitude going to be to embrace God or not? It's only all there is. There's only two choices. It's not a multi-choice question. It's a this or that. Joshua sets the model. His attitude towards service and faithfulness was chosen. And we must choose what attitude we carry in hard times. So in the morning, will I start complaining or grumbling? Or will I recognize this is the day the Lord has made, and I will rejoice and be glad in it? Oh yeah, there's a song about that. How are we going to, after we roll out of bed and the aches and the pains and the lack of sleep or the whatever, how are we going to start the day off? Going to complain and grumble all day? Or are we going to recognize that, hey, we were given another day and be glad about it? Conflicts. Will I hold on to the hurt when I'm wronged? Does it really matter that that other person over there that doesn't really seem to like me or whatever complains or talks behind my back? It's hard. Or will I let it go? In Colossians 3:13, bearing with one another and forgiving each other, whoever has complaint against anyone, just as the Lord forgave you, so also should you. We've heard that a lot. It's not easy. We are human. We carry that baggage of wanting to, and I'll say baggage, wanting to be accepted by everyone. And when we're not accepted well by one, it's kind of a sore spot. And we have troubles with that. These are not feelings. These are decisions. Now, yeah, they're feelings. But we can't let feelings entirely drive our life. They're an input to our life. We have to choose how we live our day. Trust in the Lord. He will shepherd you. Thoughts for all of us. Who is your shepherd? John 10:11. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. You know, in what Mark was been going through in Church of the History on Sunday mornings, there's been a few that he's talked about that might have laid down their life for what they believe. Martin Luther would have been one. But most of them had no interest in laying their lives down for what they were doing. They were about power and control and influence. Laying their lives down, laying someone else's life down for what they wanted. Yes, I believe there was many of those. And some very blatantly did it. But he has and will lay down his life for us. What valley are you in right now? Grief? Sin? Fear? Uncertainty? Job frustrations? Neighbor relations? Family relations? Are you having any of those? And there's multitudes of others. I could probably have listed them all right down the page. But what attitude are you choosing in dealing with these? They're not easy. That's why grief's number one. That's hard. That's hard to deal with. Sin. Doing something wrong. Know you need to change, but afraid to change. Variety of reasons. Fear itself. Nobody likes uncertainty. Nobody likes not knowing what's the next step. Job frustrations, that's the nature of working in a working world. Neighbor relations, not one we talk about a whole lot. But you may not be getting along well with your next door neighbor. Where I grew up, every once in a while you'd see what we called a spite fence go up. What's a spite fence? You may not have seen that. It is literally an 8 to 10 foot high wooden fence that goes right down the property line. And it may go from the road clear to the hillside. In some cases I have seen, and it means that you don't have to see their property, the person who put it up, and they can't see your property. About halfway between the house that I grew up in and Nathan grew up in is a spike fence. It was, I don't know, it still might be there. I haven't been there in a few years. But it went up back in probably the late 80s, maybe early 90s. People do things like that. Do you need to change? So part of what all of the words in these slides are about is helping us to think about us. I can't change Charlie. I can't change Skip. I can influence them. I can talk to them about things, but I can't change them. Each person has to decide how they want to change. And is your attitude impacting your relationship with God? Go back a slide. It says, this is the day the Lord's given me. He gave you the day. So what's your attitude about the things that He's given us? Self-reflection question. Psalms 23 and 4. Even though, all right, I missed something. So I used colors a little bit, and I tried to use colors that are very visible. Between the word though and walk is the word I. You can see it, but I have a hunch from the back you can't see it very well. Nope, I already getting nose. So I'll fix that in the future. I thought I caught everything. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. How are you walking through the valley? Are you walking through your valleys alone? Or are you talking to the Lord about what your fears are, about what your concerns are, what you don't like? He's there, and you just have to take a moment to talk to Him. And our attitude reflects upon God. For those who are parents, aunts, or uncles, if you're a parent, when your child misbehaves in public, what's one of the many thoughts, other than frustration, amongst other words, goes through your mind at some point? It's embarrassing. I trained that kid better than that. What's that kid doing that for in public, of all things? It's very tempting when they're in the 3 to 5 year old stage and they're throwing a temper tantrum to walk right away from them. And you might. Now, are you really going to walk away? No, you're going to walk away about 15 feet. You're going to, if you're in a store, you're going to tuck around the corner and you're going to peek back. Make sure nobody hurts them or takes them. But you're going to let them get the point. I don't care. Go ahead. Throw your little... pity party. I'm not dealing with it. Well, we're God's children. What happens with the same scenario? How does that reflect on God if we're claiming to be his child, one of his disciples, and we throw a temper tantrum? How does that reflect on God? Things to think about. If there's anyone here who hasn't put on Christ and would like to do that, come forward. Let us know.